And welcome to the next episode of Perspectives with Jeremiah Stephenson. And today I have Brad Brinkley, an actor, teacher, and dialect coach. How you doing today, Brad?
I'm doing well.
I just heard my cell phone go off, so I should make sure that that's turned off.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to keep going. No, we're good.
That's great.
How's your day going?
It's going great, man. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me on the show.
For sure. This was all kind of like a last minute thing. I've actually... So let's start from the very beginning. This is the second episode, I believe, that has been inspired by a Facebook post. If for those of you who didn't know, who haven't heard, if you go back and listen to episode 2 with Crash, our musician, that whole episode kind of came about from a Facebook post. And this episode with Brad kind of started from a post. We'll get into that in a little bit, but kind of give us a rundown of like who you are. What is your story?
Oh gosh, where do you want me to start?
Let's start from who your parents were and into your life, like from the very beginning.
Oh my gosh. So my dad's name was Albert, and my mother's name is Vicky, and they birthed me in North Texas. I grew up in Sherman, Texas.
Oh wow.
He was a route salesman for a cracker company, and my mother was a registered nurse, and so that was kind of their world, and they were together until I was about 8 years old, and they split, and I went to live with my mom, and my dad remarried, and he had a new wife and a stepson, and my mom had some new relationships. There were a few. I love my mom, but I make the joke that her third, fourth, and fifth husband was the same guy.
Oh wow!
It took them a little time to kind of sort out their relationship, but he's a really good dude. I still keep in contact with him sometimes. My mom and I still have a good relationship. My father passed away in 2010.
Okay. Wow.
From pancreatic and liver cancer. Thanks. And so yeah, it's always just kind of fresh on the mind right around Father's Day.
Yeah.
But I grew up an entertainer and a performer. I started doing it kind of in an amateur way when I was a kid, got more serious around high school. And then after high school, bounced around a bunch, went up to New York for a little while and all around Texas, and ended up, I don't know how deep into the story you want to go.
I want to know who you were as a teenager. Let's stop there for a second.
I was a terrible person as a teenager.
Did you know that at the time, or was that
no, man? I couldn't. Hindsight's 20/20. I couldn't have articulated anything about myself then that I can look back and see now. I think that's time and distance gives you that. Hopefully,
yeah.
If we're fortunate, we get to look back and go, "Oh, that's what that was about." But no, I was a train wreck, man. I was a pretty emotionally disturbed, upset kid. Struggled with suicidal thinking from as far back as I can remember. Got into a lot of drugs when I was mid-teens. Yeah. And by the time I got out of high school, it just got worse. And the things that I was putting in my body got more severe, and the damage from that and the sort of like the fallout got worse and worse and worse. And then ended up doing like the AA kind of recovery stuff for a while in my early 20s, and was totally sober for like 7 years, in which period of my life I went and got my undergrad in South Carolina, then went back to Texas and trying to sort out, like, am I going to be an actor? What else am I going to do? Thought I was going to get into church work for a little while. Really? Yeah, I thought this whole journey, like, and especially getting sober, like a big premise inside of AA is spirituality and some sort of kind of vague general, like some sort of spirituality. Yeah. You should come to believe in some kind of higher power. And I ended up not growing up in the church or anything. When I was 23 years old, I ended up kind of falling into the track of Christianity in North Texas. And so that was kind of how my ideas about God and faith and spirituality and stuff like that were forged. And so then I went to undergrad. I was a little older. I was about 25. And then when I got out of undergrad, I was in this season of like, I just don't know what's next. And I was wrestling with like, can I be an actor? Is that something? Surely God hates actors because Hollywood's evil. So I thought I was going to go back and go into church work and stuff. And I went to seminary for a little bit.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it was cool. Like I loved it. I like to think about and talk about theology and philosophy and stuff. It's just kind of a avocation, if you will. So anyway, I ended up leaving seminary, but while I was there, I was fortunate enough to meet this really cute redhead who is now my wife. We just celebrated 9 years.
Congratulations.
Yeah, man.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, it was awesome. And now we have 3 babies. We got married in 2010, moved up to Connecticut where I started grad school, and then moved down to Virginia Beach where I finished grad school.
I actually grew up in Chesapeake, Virginia.
Okay.
I was born there.
So you know the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel.
Yes,
That's
absolutely.
the most horrifying piece of...
Crazy fun.
Oh my God.
As a child, I've never driven through it as an adult.
Okay, so let me tell you my first experience in Chesapeake Bay. So I was living in Connecticut and we were driving down to Virginia Beach to check things out. If you don't know the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel, listeners, it's like this 17-mile long, 13-mile, I don't know, it's long.
It's long. It's an experience for sure.
It's this long suspension bridge that goes over the Chesapeake Bay. It's so long that at a certain point you get out on it and you can no longer see land. Mm-hmm. And there are a couple of sections that dip down underneath the water.
I remember specifically those parts.
Yeah. So my first experience of that bridge was driving across it from the Delaware side in a monsoon.
Oh.
The rain was hitting so hard it was coming sideways and it was shaking our car. My knuckles were white on the steering wheel. I was so terrified. I remember I started praying and like quoting scripture to myself because I don't know, it was like chanting a mantra or something. I was just trying to not die. Yeah. It was like, maybe if I sing Jesus songs, God won't kill me. I don't know.
That's horrifying.
It was terrifying, dude. So that was my introduction to that. But anyway, if you've never gone across that bridge tunnel, I highly recommend it. It's the most terrifying thing that I've ever encountered in North America. So we moved down to Virginia Beach, and I finished grad school there. While we were there, we had our first child, our daughter, who's now 6. And then when I left in 2014, we came to Atlanta. Right after we got to Atlanta, our second child, our oldest son, was born. And then 6 months later, we ended up getting pregnant with our third child, also a son, who's now 2.5.
Awesome.
So 6, 4, 2.5. That's kind of like the big, fast and dirty birth to now. And
nice.
I've been in Atlanta.
I like that. That's good.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I've been here for about 4.5 years.
Okay,
in the entertainment industry. And
so what kind of brought you to the realization, like, yes, I can be an actor and be within this industry and still have that spiritual connection to God?
Yeah, I think it was a slow process. I don't think that it was any one. I didn't have like any turning points that I went like, aha, I was wrong. I think it was just at the time I probably had a poor theology of God and like what He's for and against. And so it's like it's taken me. I mean, I've been trying to sort out this faith life for about 15 years now. And it's taken me that long to, I feel like, begin to understand a little bit about God's heart and His character and what He is willing to kind of be on board with and what He asks us maybe to steer clear of. And so I don't know. It wasn't any one thing. It was just like over a series of years. I tell you one thing. I can actually give you one answer. I think I grew in a little bit more understanding of my own gifting.
Oh,
and like
nice.
It was just kind of like beginning to take ownership at a certain point of like, this is how I'm wired. I'm made this way. Yeah. And like with any good thing, like there's a way to abuse it and there's a way to use it well.
Absolutely.
And so that was one of the things that sort of unraveled over the last few years. It's like, this is just who I am. It's how I'm made. Now it's a matter of like not going like, is God for it or against it, but how can I best use it for the benefit of others?
Yes.
So that's kind of, I'm still in the middle of sorting a lot of that out.
Absolutely. I think that's something that we as human beings, because we are not, once you hit 21, you're not grown. Right. That's something that we will always continue to, in new stages of life especially. Sure. It's like, what can I do with what I'm going through or how I'm feeling or what at the moment, like I used to be able to know how to do crazy good 3D animation and stuff like that. I can't do that anymore. I realized that today. I was like, oh my gosh, that's too much. But like, for those different processes and the seasons of life, like how can I best present God in this way? Yeah. Like, I think that's really cool. I don't think that's something that we'll ever be done with. Yeah. Like we'll definitely have something that overarch over long periods of time, but I'm excited to see how that continues to look for people. Yeah. And I think you touch on this idea that, revelation comes in stages sometimes. And I think that like when I look back, I go, okay, coming out of undergrad, I had a real tight grip, and it's been a recurring kind of cycle in my life of having a real tight grip on my career of like, this is the way that I want it to be, so tight that it kind of chokes the life out of it sometimes. And I think for me, a part of that journey
was having to sort of step away from it or let it go for a little bit in order to kind of learn something new about myself, or maybe in order to engage the industry or the work in a new way, in a way that wasn't so desperate, so that I could do it, but kind of be free from letting it control me.
Yeah.
And I think that God has taken me through several cycles like that. And the more that he does, I feel like the more that I'm liberated from the control that it has or used to have
over you, yeah.
Over me. Yeah.
One of the things we'll step back a little bit is what got you to a place of seeking help, like during your younger years, like right around 21 and getting to AA. Was there one specific thing that happened that pushed you to that, or was it a culmination of things?
I ended up living on a dude's couch at one point, and I was trying to be a drug dealer, but I wasn't good at it because I'd smoke all my own product, and I just was too scared. Like I'm gonna go to jail, so I was just a way better drug user than I was. I didn't have the entrepreneurial spirit to be a drug dealer. I remember a phone call, and it was a series of events. I mean, it was like this slow decline, but there are two things that happened that were really pivotal to me. One was a girl that I was dating at the time. I had gotten into methamphetamines for a while.
Oh, wow.
And she had, at one point before we were together, she'd had a history with that as well. And I remember a phone call. I had just kind of derailed, man, and my life was falling apart. I couldn't keep a job well. I was just a train wreck. I was always high. And she, on a phone call, she said, "I can't go where you're going." And it was like the first time I feel like I remember anybody confronting me about like, hey, where you are and what you're doing is not okay. I said there were two things. There's three. The second one was, I remember I went out one night with these guys that I was friends with, and we went to this biker bar in my hometown, and we ended up getting some cocaine. And I don't know what happened because it was a blackout night, but I remember we worked together, and the next day at the restaurant, one of the dudes that I was doing blow with was like, "Bro, you were being weird last night." And something in me went, if the people you're doing cocaine with tell you you're being weird,
there's something going on.
You probably need to take a look at it.
There's a lot going on, yeah.
Yeah. And then the third thing, at one point I was trying to kind of get clean. I was living in my dad's house, and I had relapsed. And so a buddy of mine had taken me out. We were drinking. We'd found out online that you could take a bunch of Dramamine and have a hallucinogenic experience. So we tried that. And I don't know what happened between his apartment and my dad's house, but somehow he took me back to my dad's. At one point, I remember trying to smoke a stick of chapstick because I thought it was a cigarette.
What? That's
anyway,
crazy.
Yeah. Anyway, I ended up in November in the rain in my dad's backyard with his little Pomeranian barking and waking them up because I was out there digging in the mud. And they brought me in. He babysat me. I don't remember any of this stuff. I was trying to put couch cushions in the oven. And
oh, wow.
I remember at one point I tried to introduce myself to my father.
Oh.
There was a shoe on top of a lamp at one point. But the thing that stood out to me is, in a clear as day, it's like in the middle of all of that, and I really don't remember most of that evening, but there's this one little 4 seconds of time where it's like everything goes perfectly clear, and I can see my father standing in the doorway of my bedroom with just the saddest look on his face, and he goes, "I can't watch you kill yourself." And I think it was the first time that I had ever felt like my dad even cared about me or loved me. Like I saw this pain that I was causing. And it wasn't like I didn't wake up the next day and go, "I'm going to change my life."
Right.
But it was within a few weeks, like that really landed with me. And that was the turning point where I went like, okay, I got to get help, and not just like go to meetings or whatever. Like I got to do the stuff that they say and really try and see if I can change my life.
Take full responsibility for it.
Yeah.
And look for that.
Yeah. And it was about 3 months later that I became a Christian. That was kind of where the spirituality journey took me. And I felt like, and still feel like that at that point, kind of a power to become different entered my life that I hadn't had before. Because I had tried just sort of general spirituality. Yeah. And while I got a lot of good ideas, like it never really seemed to empower me to change.
Gotcha.
And so for me, and the way that I tell my story is like that coming to faith, a power entered my life at that moment where things really began to change. And I really began to, piece by piece, let go of kind of who I used to be and how I used to live and start taking on some new stuff. So that was kind of that whole at least the beginnings of those journeys.
Yeah. One of the reasons why I love asking people, because I know so many people, that's the thing. Everyone's like, Jeremiah, you know people. One of the reasons why I love asking people, like, what is your story, is because I see you today. You're this father, you're this upstanding guy, and you're doing all these things. But not everyone is. That's not everyone's story. Like, I went through a lot to get to this point. Like, I've experienced a lot to get to this point.
Yeah.
And I think that we sometimes in our society kind of forget what people have gone through.
Yeah.
Not ever forget, but sometimes people don't know. But I think that should be heard and expressed so that people can see that maybe there's someone else that's a little bit younger than me that's hearing your story. And they're like, oh, wow, like, maybe hearing you tell you the truths that have happened and the things that you've experienced can help someone else not have to go through the same thing. Yeah. So they can have a better quality of life.
Yeah. And it's good for us too, just to remember our own stories.
Yes.
Like, I think it's easy for me to forget, like, oh man, that's where I used to be.
Yeah.
Especially when you get bogged down and like, everything sucks, life's so hard, blah, blah, blah. Like to stop and go like, oh, but 15 years ago, wow, things were really different. And I really have grown a lot. And a lot of things have been accomplished over the course of the past 15 years, but it's so easy to lose sight of that. Yeah. You know? Yeah.
Nice. So let's get to what brought you onto the show.
Yeah.
There's a Facebook post that was posted, I don't know, like a month and a half ago. For those of us who are like me, those of us who listen to politics and stuff, they follow things. I intentionally don't, because in our homeschool co-op group, I got nominated for like the state house representative. We did like a mock thing, and I've always had an inclination towards politics, but I've deliberately tried to stay away from it because I don't like people. I love people, but I don't like people. If that makes any sort of semblance or sense.
Sure.
But here in Georgia, we both work in the film industry. The heartbeat bill was a huge thing. It's still, I guess, it is.
Yeah.
But you had a post. Could you kind of streamline that post in your own words? And then we can kind of go into it, because I want to hear your story.
I even thought to myself, I was like, I should go back and read what I posted before we talk about this, and I didn't make myself do it.
See, I was going to do that right now, but I was like, I don't know. I have you here. Let's just talk to the person.
The gist of it was, and this is the whole reason for being here. I went through an abortion when I was 17. I didn't go, obviously. I was a part of an abortion when I was a teenager. I got another girl, my girlfriend, also a teenager, pregnant. And we ended up through really sitting down. She was being raised by a single mom. I was being raised by a single mom. And I remember the four of us sitting at a table admitting the truth about what was going on and figuring out what we were going to do about it. We were going to keep this baby, and, or the decision, I can't even talk. The decision that we ultimately made was to get an abortion. And so when the stuff about the heartbeat bill came up, I saw people on both sides, posting just venom, man, and hatred from both sides, and no listening and no empathy, just spouting from a place of ideology, and kind of like intellectual grandstanding, or just like emotionalism that without stopping to think or hear the other side. And it just felt really chaotic. And I was like, man, I want to contribute something to this conversation, but I don't know what to say. And so I think I just posted something to the effect of kind of admitting, the decision that I had made when I was a teenager, and how that had stuck with me. And the big idea that I wanted to share was that I was, through a process of healing and prayer and counseling and things like that, I no longer live under the guilt and the shame that I had. But it still lingers.
Yeah.
And it's a decision that, like, if I could go back 1,000 times over, like I wish that I had made a different decision. And I think that that's a regret. We think this idea of healing means that, like, you're totally free from all regret or whatever. You just don't ever think about it anymore. And it's like, no, I'm at peace in the sense of I don't feel condemned. Mm-hmm. But if I could go back knowing what I know now, I really think I would make a different decision. Yeah. Because, I think about like, I've got 3 kids now, and like, we just celebrated my 4th son's birthday. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I would be celebrating, like, what would that be? I'm trying to do math in my head.
No, that's fine.
I took one class in college called math for liberal arts majors. But I guess I would be celebrating like a 20th birthday of a child. I would have a 20-year-old, probably out of high school, maybe a couple years into college kid that now I've never seen and I'll never know. And, you know, I mean, it's like it's heartbreaking. And you can't, on the other side of having chosen that path, it's like those are some of the consequences that linger. And my heart cry was just like, look, man, if you're on the verge of that decision, if you're in that spot where it seems like the only option, I'm not here to bash and condemn, but I sure would love to create a space where you could have those kind of conversations. And that was what I wanted to urge people towards, was like, you got to have some empathy, man.
And I love that. That's that really stuck out to me, is that you were admitting to something and being vulnerable, but in a place to where you were trying to help someone else that may have been in that situation or headed toward the situation. And I thought that was really honorable.
I was 21 years old and I was in a rehab center. And I remember, I think this guy's name was Josh. He was some other dude that was in the rehab center. And we were hanging out. And I remember this was the first time, because I had kind of forgotten about that. And I don't, you know, it's like you go like, what was the drug use to cover up the pain and the guilt? I don't know. I just did a lot of drugs.
Yeah.
And so, like, I don't even
doesn't
remember.
Need to have a deeper meaning.
I don't even remember graduating high school. I have pictures of it, and I'm like, okay, I did. There's evidence, but I don't remember walking the stage. But that's how I lived. I was just kind of like in a multi-year blackout. From like 15, 16 years old. But I remember talking to this guy and admitting having killed a baby. That was the words that came out of my mouth. I'm not trying to put the label of baby killer on other people in that situation. I'm just saying, I remember telling him I killed a baby. And I remember just the snot and the tears and the shame and all of that. Just pour. I just sat and sobbed for, it felt like a solid half hour in front of this dude that I had no idea who he even was. And it was the first time that I had ever talked to someone else about it. And it's like, that's my deal, is like, have the conversation. It's like, no matter what side of it, whether you're on the side that you're thinking about, maybe that's the choice you need to make, or if it's the choice you have made, but you've never processed it or dealt with it, like, you got to put a label on it and you got to have that conversation, because the only pathway, unless you name it and deal with it honestly, you can't find healing if you just keep it repressed. And I had done that for so long, like, when it came out, it was just this flood of emotion. But it was also the turning point where I was able to start to come out from under some of that guilt and some of that shame. So,
but before you got to the place of healing, what did that guilt and that pain look like to you?
I just remember I'm a murderer. We don't want to label ourselves, you know, like the easiest thing to do, and I can think the default mode of, I want to say the default mode of the human heart, but I'll say for sure the default mode of my heart is to try and justify myself. So rather than go, I'm a liar, I'm a murderer, I hate, you know, whatever, fill in the blank. It's always to try and we try to rationalize and come up with an excuse so I don't have to feel bad about it. And I think that was the beginning of it for me, was just having to sort of, like I said a minute ago, put a name on it and own the fact, like, yes, you made the choice to kill a child. That is who you are. It's not something you did. It was born out of your character and some deep brokenness. And yeah, there may have been, like, if you talked about it, maybe we could find a whole bunch of justifiable reasons to try and excuse it. But for me, what was most helpful was just going like, this is what it was. This is who I am. Left to my own devices, these are the kinds of decisions I end up finding myself making. And I don't know how the healing began. I think it was a lot of people just loving me and caring for me and walking alongside me and not heaping a bunch of condemnation on me. I didn't go through like a formal counseling, but it was just having people that I could share this truth with that would still look me in the eye and go, you have dignity, you have worth, You're loved. It's all going to be okay. And, somewhere over a period of, I would say probably a few years, I just ended up, the last time, I don't think I've ever told anybody about this, somewhere, I actually have a lighter with the exit number off of this highway. I drove up north, somewhere up Highway 85 when I was still living in South Carolina. And I had written a letter to this child and took it. And I just took this exit, and there happened to be this kind of lake, and there was like this burn barrel in one of those 55-gallon drums. And I remember taking this letter and reading it out loud to this baby that I would never get the chance to see, and then lighting it on fire as sort of like a send-off or trying to let it go. Yeah. And I remember that was like the last big, I want to say event. But that was like the last big moment that I remember wrestling with it all. So continued conversations about it with other people, and just enough time this is, part of, I think, the way healing works is like sometimes it just takes time to get away from that part of yourself before you start to be able to see yourself in a new light. Before you start to be able to think about yourself differently. Because when you're really close to it, it's all you can see. Yeah. It lives at the front of your brain. And so over a period of a few years, and then just sort of little healing exercises like that, I eventually just kind of like, I don't feel condemned anymore. Yeah. I mean, I attribute that, as a Christian, it's like we can get real deep and theological and go, well, like I believe Jesus bore that sin. Yeah. But a part of that is the gift of going like, I don't have to live in self-hatred. Yeah.
Dang, this is nice.
If it's too deep, we can get superficial.
No, this is great.
I can crack jokes.
No, this is, I was going to say, like, we're halfway through the podcast. We'll probably get to that at some point, maybe. But no, I really thank you for one of the things I see now. I say this on a few episodes continually, is just like genuine people. And I thank you for opening yourself up to be vulnerable, to allow people to hear this story, to hear your story and the things that you've experienced, to help, hopefully, encourage someone else in whatever their walk or their story.
That's the hope, man.
Yeah, and that's the biggest hope. That's why I do a lot of things and tell people like my whole life story. Yeah, because it's crazy, it's fun. It's
we have to make a space to be genuine and give other people space to share that with us, their own genuineness, and that's what as a race, a human race, that we're just all kind of crappy at. It's like we'd rather do the veneer because it's just easier. But like real intimacy, real life, real healing, real relationship, it doesn't come unless you have real rigorous honesty. And a lot of people just aren't. Maybe they're not willing, or maybe they're just not ready to live that way. Yeah. But the cool thing is like I think as you practice that in your own life in front of other people, it's like little by little, it frees them up. Yes. And they go like, oh, he told this story and he didn't like catch fire in front of me. Maybe I can do that too. Yeah.
Well, because I've also learned over the last several years, like living up here, I came into Atlanta like, I want to find genuine people. Like, I have to like only be around genuine people and all that stuff. But I realized that genuine looks different to certain people. Sure, yeah. So I've also had to learn that too. Yeah. And it's fun. I don't know. I feel like I'm still basking in that story and like hearing everything. Like I'm still like, is there anything you want to add to that as a closeout or?
I mean, I think I said it in other ways, but like if it was like a call to action for anybody with whom that story resonates, is just, if you've never had that conversation with somebody, especially if you're on the other side of having made that choice, have the conversation, as terrifying as it feels, because it's going to be liberating. It's going to be to be known. I mean, that's how mercy works, is to be known, really known, warts and all, but still be extended love and grace. That's what transforms us. And that's what sets us free from the guilt and the shame. And it's like, as long as we go, I'm going to hold on to this and just keep it till I go to my grave, there'll always be a sense in the presence of others that we're not really known. And because of that, we'll never feel really loved and really connected, because in the back of our minds, we go like, but I know I'm hanging on to something that they don't know about. Yeah. If they really knew this there's no way. They'd tell me to leave right now. Yeah. You know, and it's just not true. Mm-hmm. But the only way that you'll know that it's not true is to take the terrifying risk of going, I need to talk about this. Mm. Yeah. And then on the other side of it, you go like, I didn't die. This might end up being okay.
I was talking to my girlfriend recently. I was telling her how I used to have anxiety. Mm. I won't say it was heavy, but like I used to be scared of just doing things. And it got to the point where I was like, especially going to work when I started my first job at the age of 15, I was a lifeguard. So my thing is like, oh my gosh, I might have to save somebody today. Are they going to die or are they not going to die? I think
that's a lot of pressure.
It's a lot of pressure. Yeah, absolutely. And I tell people to this day, I'm like, I think that working in the service industry and lifeguarding should be two of the first jobs. If you're going to have your kid learn how to work in the workforce younger, do those two things, because it teaches you the quality of life and the value of life. Mm-hmm. And you are responsible for that life. If you can save it, if you can't, like you'll have to figure out how to, heal from that process. But I think it teaches responsibility on a very different level than most jobs do. And in the service industry, you have to deal with people's attitudes.
Oh my God.
In such another, it's so different. But, it got to the point where I was like, I'm going to work. I have to do this stuff. Am I going to die? And so like whenever things started presenting themselves, where like I kind of got anxious about it, I was like, am I going to die if I do it? No. And then I started dialing it back. So it goes from like, am I going to die if I do this thing? No, you're not going to die. Are you going to, hurt yourself physically? No, I'm not going to hurt myself. Then like what's stopping me from doing it? Like, all right, am I going to feel emotionally, like, is this emotionally healthy? Is this emotionally not healthy? It's emotionally healthy if I do it, or it's not, but what are the outcomes? So that's how I backed down. It started off with, are you going to die if you do this thing? So that I think is hilarious. But all of that to say, I'm stepping back again. How did that experience and getting the healing, how did that walk with you into your relationship with your wife? And how did that transform you, I guess, into your relationship now and your relationship with your children?
Well, right off the cuff, I mean, like it informs everything about being a dad. Like even because, a lot of people don't like to talk to you about how insane parenting can be, especially if you have multiple kids. So like we've got 3 kids that are between the ages of 2.5 and 6, and it's just like it's like wartime.
Yeah. Happy Father's Day, by the way.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, that was yesterday.
Yeah, it was great. We hung out and had ribs and
nice.
Did a little cookout. It was fun, but that because of that part of my past, I mean, like it definitely has. There's a gratefulness underneath even the most miserable moments. Just because I go like, I cannot believe that even though, it's like from a spiritual perspective, I'll just shoot point blank. It's like, I go, why would God entrust me with 3 kids? There's lots of people out there who are dying to have a child who can't, and they're heartbroken, and they would be far better parents than I probably ever would be. Why in the world would God give somebody like me kids? And it's just like, you go, there's no excuse except mercy. Like there's no good explanation except graciousness, I think because of that part of my story, I really do see children as a gift. They're not some ball and chain or some obligation or some curse that's got to be broken. Like they really are a blessing, and they really are designed, I think, not just to be a responsibility, but to change us. I think they're a mechanism of transformation if you let them be. If you fight that sort of temptation to get bitter or resentful when times are hard, or when you do have to choose them over yourself and stuff like that. Like if you can stay mindful, they're a really wonderful thing, and they're a ton of joy. And I think had I not gone through what I went through as a teenager, like I don't know if I'd see it that way. Yeah. And then also, it's like, and this is not directly connected, but I didn't have a good relationship with my dad. We weren't close.
I meant to actually ask you that earlier. But
yeah, he was
around to it. How was that? What did that look like?
I think he did the best he could with what he had. But when my parents split, he, like I said, within a couple of years, he ended up remarried, and he sort of just kind of went off and did this new life thing. Wasn't super engaged. He was pretty. I mean, I guess the best word is negligent. Like, I don't know, maybe that's too dramatic. He did kind of the bare minimum.
Yeah.
But it was also like, it was one of those court structure.
He was there, but he wasn't present.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if he didn't want to be a dad or I don't know what his childhood was like. I didn't really know him super well. So I can't say like, oh, well, this is what shaped him to be the way I don't know.
Right.
All I know is I towards the end of his life, we started to get a little closer, but we had a real, I had no real sense growing up of like affection or like he loved me. I felt more like an annoyance and a frustration, and like I could always be doing something better because if he had something to say, most of the time it was sort of critical or like a backhanded compliment kind of thing. And because of that, I think I'm just more conscious of trying to love my kids and trying to be present with them and trying to let them know I care for them and they bring me joy and they're not just a pain in the ass. Yeah. Censor that.
No, it's good.
If you need to. I don't know. I don't know who your audience is.
We literally do whatever we want. I don't say that. We don't do whatever we want. But yeah, you're free to say all things. How has your relationship with your mom, what does that look like?
I mean, we still are in connection. We don't get to see each other as much as we like. She lives a couple of hours south. And so, I think we went through a period probably where I was trying to sort stuff out in my life for maybe about 10 years where we stayed in communication, but she was kind of on another track with her husband and I was off trying to figure out my own identity in life and, forge my own path. And so we sort of lost connectivity, but in the past, I'd say, well, since I moved to Atlanta, so probably the past 4 years, we've gotten to spend more time together and reconnect and get closer. And our relationship, I feel like, continues to grow and get healthier.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So let's go to acting now a little bit.
All right,
I know we asked, I think I did. So you moved to Atlanta 4 years ago.
Yep.
Had you got back into acting before you moved to Atlanta, or?
Yeah, that was so. I had gone to grad school for acting.
Okay, cool.
And so that's what I was studying, acting,
gotcha.
And then a concentration in directing. And as soon as I finished that, I moved. Like October 2014 is when I moved to Atlanta.
Okay.
And it was because of the industry.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Have you directed anything?
I don't put a lot of energy into directing. I'm self-producing a project right now that's going to go up hopefully the first 3 weeks of September, and I'm kind of functioning as a director, but more as sort of like artistic director. I'm starting a theater company.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, so I guess that's I don't know how to release big information.
It's all good.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I have no strategy. Like, oh, by the way, I'm starting a theater company.
And at the end, I'll ask you to plug whatever you've been in if you want people to see that. You don't have to.
No, but we're producing a play in a couple of months, and so I'm functioning kind of as a director in that in the interim until we find somebody to fill in. But no, most of my focus has been on acting, and then I've had a lot of opportunity to teach in a couple of the studios around the city, and I work as a dialect coach in TV and film, and so that's fun.
So dialect coaching, how did you get into that?
Bro, like
that? Because that sounds interesting.
It's so funny though. It's like it just keeps finding me.
Okay.
Like I have never once tried to find a dialect coaching job. I'll tell you exactly who it is. Let me give a shout out to a woman named Cynthia Barrett, and indirectly to Rob Mello, because when Rob used to let me teach at his studio, I was teaching voice for actors.
Very nice.
Yeah, it was great. And Cynthia also teaches voice, and she would she wasn't teaching kind of like the intro level stuff anymore, and so when students would come to her wanting a class like that, she'd go, "Oh, okay, Brad's doing that over at RMS, you should go do that."
Okay.
And so they would come, and then it started happening that somehow along the way she found out I also had some skills with dialects, and she would get so much work sometimes that she didn't have enough margin to take another job. And so she'd be like, "Hey, they're interviewing for this thing. Do you want to interview for it?" And little by little, man, people just keep hiring me. And like I've probably in the past couple of years, I've been on like, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 different major television shows and feature films.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and it's a really, really great gig. I love it. I get to meet cool people and sort of operate in circles. As an actor, you show up on set, you do your job, and then you just kind of go away, unless you're one of the big dogs.
Right.
But as a dialect coach, like I get to hang out in Video Village with the executive producers and the directors and all these cool people that I would never have proximity to as an actor.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so like it's been one of those things I was never looking for it, never trying to forge that path, and like it just keeps kind of coming my way,
knocking on the door.
Yeah, I probably shouldn't say that. There's probably I should tell people how hard I've worked, but like it's just not true. It just
happened. So acting. What was the? So from the people that I've talked to, I feel like there's either two stories. I fell into acting, or three. I fell into acting something I was always pursued, or acting became not my world, but acting unveiled itself to me. What is your story with what helped you choose to study undergrad in acting? Like, what does that entire process look like?
And then there's thunder in the background. Yeah, I don't know if you can hear it. That was cool. Thunder just rolled. That was ominous. Why are you an actor? It's like a person over in the corner with a sheet of tin. Put in a sound effect when you edit this. I've been an actor since I was 10 years old. Not a professional, but like in my heart, I've been an actor. I did a production of Peter Pan the Musical at our local small town North Texas community theater. Sherman Community Players, shout out. Ron Cassidy. It was either him or a guy named Webster Crocker directing this show. But anyway, I was Slightly Soiled, the leader of the Lost Boys. And I can't tell you anything about that show except that I just remember, and I can still see it. I remember being on that stage. I remember the brightness of the lights and kind of blinding me to the point I could barely see the audience. But I remember saying or doing something and everybody erupting in laughter. Like that is the first moment that I remember as an actor, not in rehearsals, but in performance. And I've always loved that. I think my first love will always be theater. If I thought I could actually pay my bills, I'd be content with a life in the theater, man. I love theater. It's like, it's a different animal than TV film. But I genuinely love it. It just doesn't pay anything. But that's a side note. I don't know what it has to do with anything. But that moment, man, like I never looked back. I wish I've tried over and over for several years to like find something else to want to be. And it's just like deep in my soul, I always come back to like, that's the thing. Yes. You know? Nice. So, I mean, as long as I can remember. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's probably like early 20s. When I decided to go to undergrad to study theater was, I think, probably the most conscious, like, I want to pursue this as a professional. Mm-hmm. And then when I got out of grad school in 2014 was the first time that I had ever moved to a major market. I had been working professionally in smaller markets, some theater here or outdoor drama, or maybe you get some non-union TV or commercial stuff or whatever. But coming to Atlanta was the first time that I had been in a really major competitive market. And so for me, that was when like the hustle hashtag grinding really started to kick in, and I went like, okay, I gotta figure out how to be a business person and build this thing out.
One of the things I am continuing to hear, and I think is pretty interesting, is you have, if you're not a child actor, there's generally like a moment or several times when you're growing up where you're like, this is it, this is acting, it's amazing, it's amazing. But as you continue to grow up and kind of get older, things kind of come in and dilute that. And then at some point, it's this thing where it's like that dream as a child can be a reality. And like it's fun to listen to people talk about that click or that switch or the transition into that, like, oh my gosh, I am an actor. It's fun to hear those stories because growing up, so I was homeschooled all the way through. And growing up, I thought I was going to be a scientist, because I thought I was academically smart. That is not the case. I am very smart. I'm intelligent, but I'm not academically book smart. And so I was like, I'm just going to watch the stars from Reddit. And like do science stuff from there. But I had always had this thing to watch, like the behind the scenes on DVDs and Blu-rays to see how productions were made, and like that just sparked my interest. And so from there is like, well, how do I edit a little short, and then how do I do stop motion, how do I do 3D modeling and stuff like that. So I just taught myself everything from that back and forth. So I'm blessed in the fact that I was able to consistently ride that on out. And like even as a kid in my teen years, I did a lot of stuff in my hometown, Brunswick, with like adults that had production, like little companies and things like that. But it's awesome to hear, and I appreciate what I've had, because I'm able to get to hear stories like that where it's like, this is something I had to experience as a child, but like it didn't necessarily take off. And so like getting back to that place to where like you can realize that like this is what I can do as an adult. Like this thing that has captured my attention and my imagination. Yeah. Like that's really, really cool.
I think it's also like one of the things that's really changed over the past few years for me is just the realization that like I was working backstage. I was working on a show and I was backstage for about 70 pages with this other actress. Her name is Cynthia Barker. She's a local. She's awesome. But we were talking about how she was out of grad school. I was out of grad school. And of all the people that we went to school with, there weren't a ton of them out there trying to work in the industry. Like most had gone on to do other things or whatever. And I was like, but we're doing it though. We're out there trying to be working actors. And she's like, yeah, sometimes the dream don't look like the dream. Mm. And it was really profound because I think it was a turning point for me to start going like, yeah, I've always kind of been on this actor track, but I've got to learn to give myself permission to know that it won't always look the way that I think it's supposed to look. And just because it doesn't, just because I'm not performing exclusively as my sole means of income, or because I'm not, a household name or number one on a call sheet, doesn't mean that I'm not an actor. Like the life of a working actor for most of us is usually about juggling several different, income streams or opportunities or whatever. And so it's taken me a little while to make peace with like, that's okay. Yeah. It's not a failure or an insult to who you are. Right. It's just kind of the game. Yeah. And like, you have to make a decision whether or not you're willing to accept that, whether or not you're willing to accept that success as it's typically defined may never, ever, ever pan out for you. Mm-hmm. Are you willing to keep pursuing it even if it doesn't? Yeah. And there's no shame in if you come to the point of like, no, I don't want to chase that dragon anymore, man. I want to go get a 9-to-5 and be financially stable and not lose my mind all the time and plan for retirement and my kids' college. Cool. Yeah. You can do that. You don't have to be constrained by that narrow definition of what it looks like to be an actor. Yeah. Or that because it's who you are and what you want to pursue, that like you can't ever let it go or let it shift. And anyway, I'm rambling, but that's good. That's just how I get my concept of it has evolved, and that's been kind of freeing. Yeah, I think 'cause it makes me feel a lot less desperate about the whole thing.
So, how many years overall have you been in acting? Would you say? Like professional acting.
Professional, I mean, I say just a little over a decade. Okay.
Yeah. Is there anything you would like to say?
12 years, I guess.
12 years? Yeah. Is there anything you would like to say to, I guess, the influx of newer actors coming into their own and getting used to the Atlanta market?
Well, what if I was brand new? It's the same thing everybody. I don't have anything original to say. It's the same thing that you hear every other competent person in the industry say, I think, and I just steal from them. Go learn to be a good actor. Mm-hmm. Booking jobs shouldn't be your first priority if you're brand new to the industry. And it doesn't mean that you have to go to conservatory. Go to the Robert Mello Studio or Drama Inc. or go take workshops with Brian Beagle or Erica Arvold or, there's slews of good coaches and casting directors and teachers. Start there though. Learn what acting is all about and figure out whether or not, from people who know what it takes to be that, go let them tell you whether or not you have the stuff to actually do it. Not just because it's fun or because you're attractive and someone told you you should be on camera. Go learn how to be a good actor. And then while you're learning how to be a good actor, learn about the business side of the industry. I always recommend a book called Self-Management for Actors. I'm sure there are other great resources out there, but it's a book by a woman named Bonnie Gillespie. And it is such a practical nuts and bolts guide to figuring out how this industry operates primarily, just like the big general rules of how the industry functions, and then how to figure out what your place in that is. So if you go become a good actor, you figure out how the industry works, and then you figure out what your place in the industry is, then you can start worrying about getting an agent and booking work and trying to build a career. Because if you don't have those other things in place first, you go in blind and you don't really have anything specific to offer. And you may get lucky because you're really cute or really funny in this one audition. You might book like that one-line co-star, but then all of a sudden there's going to be a bell curve where people are going to realize, oh, this person doesn't have the skill set to do this for the long haul. Mm-hmm. And you will disappear from their radar unless you have a technique and a skill set underneath it to sustain you for the long haul.
Nice. So now, Brad, it comes to the point of the podcast where I have our previous guest ask our current guest a question.
Okay. Okay, this is a surprise. I didn't know about this.
I generally tell people beforehand.
Does everybody's face look exactly like mine did just then?
Most of the time I tell them beforehand.
Yeah. Okay, great.
But this time I decided not to.
Is it a mystery guest?
It is a mystery guest for those of us listening to this current episode. Oh. If you don't know who it is, go back to the last episode and listen to it.
Oh, okay, cool.
The last episode, though, was the 12th episode of this season. I'm intending on doing 24 episodes this year, 2 a month. And so we had brought back somebody that had been on previously. So that was a good time.
Who are they?
They are a wonderful person.
Okay.
I can tell you after we cut this part.
Okay, right on. Sounds good.
So, Brad, our question from our previous guest for you, sir.
Okay.
Is
did they text in?
They actually said it. So if you were to listen to the last episode, you actually get to hear.
Oh, they asked it at the end of their episode. Okay, cool.
Episode.
This is cool.
Yeah, and you get to ask the next guest a question.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. See, isn't that fun? It's so fun.
But now I'm like, I don't know what I'm.
Don't think about it.
Okay,
it's okay.
you're right.
It's all good. It's all good.
We're back in this moment. I'm
present.
This
one right here. We're present. Beard or no beard?
Well, since I'm growing this mountainous beard on my face, I feel like I have a small dog on my face. For now, beard.
Okay, and
I'm neither pro nor anti-beard. I like them both.
Yeah. Because I met you without a beard.
Yeah, well, I've gone... So, the short version of the story is like for years and years and years, I've had a shaved head. Mm-hmm. And I've just kind of always... Not that I was trying to hide the fact that I was balding, but I just felt like my best look was this sort of clean-shaven look. And but because of that, like all I ever get called in for is like vanilla authority figure number 4. And I was like, man, I'm so tired of playing cops and like one-liner like... that kind of stuff. I want to do more dad stuff and comic stuff, which I really love. I don't ever get to do comedy. Mm-hmm. So I'm growing out this big beard, trying to get my Walking Dead face on.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's kind of, I get dad and I get like, you could be living out in like post-apocalyptic, but not like terrible.
Right, we could trim this up and I could be a little bit classy.
Yeah, that's nice.
Or I could look really haggardly and just nasty. And
question: do you do improv, or have you done improv?
So various types of improv were a big part of my training background.
Okay.
I don't practice it in the city. I think it's a really fascinating form. And as far as like the sketch, short form, comic improv, no, I have never done it. It's something that I've wanted to try for a long time. This is my secret. Okay. I want to hear what you're about to say.
Okay.
I also want to try stand-up comedy.
Oh, I'm actually in the process. Me and the previous guest, we're actually in the process of writing some stand-up.
Oh my god!
And we actually, I know another actress who has a list of places to go and try your stand-up at for like open mic nights.
I would rather stand naked in a public square. No one would want to see that. But I would rather do that than try stand-up comedy. That's how much it terrifies me. But it also seems like it could be really exhilarating.
I'm excited for what I have thus far. Uh-huh. I know it's funny between me and my friends. Right. And that's the thing. It's like, I know it's funny with me and my friends. And even my friends give me a lot of shit about it. They're like, you're not that funny, all that stuff. But like, it's more so, I know I'm more so like the storytelling stand-up.
Yeah.
That's the type of stand-up I would do.
Yeah. What were you going to say about improv?
So improv.
Yeah.
Actually tonight, every night of Atlanta, or every night of the week, sorry, you can go to improv jam. Oh, and Monday nights they have improv jam at Orpheus Brewing Company.
Oh, sweet!
It's free. You come in, you do some games with your group, and anybody can drop in, and you'll do a scene, and then everybody else does their scene. It's fun. It's easy. Wow. It's free. You can have a beer if you want while you're at it. So I'll invite you to the next one that happens.
Yes, please do, because Orpheus makes a fantastic beer.
We were literally talking about that earlier today.
Their beers are phenomenal. They're one of the best. Good. I think one of the best in Atlanta.
thoroughly enjoy the transmigration of souls.
Yep. I'm a big fan of, they have a stout called, it's Ye Who Enter, or All Ye Who Enter. It's like a 13 or 14% bourbon barrel stout.
Very nice.
It'll blow your mind.
One of their sours are really good, but I don't remember which one it is.
They had like a red currant one or a raspberry one or something. Anyway.
And then there's a white grape. There's a white grape that I think I've tried once.
I don't even know. I just know they make good beers.
Huh. So, Brad, what is your question for the next guest? I can give you a few minutes if you want. Not every minute, like a minute. But it can be funny. It can be deep, thoughtful. It can be literally anything.
What were the 3 most formative songs or bands or musicians, if you will, in your, let's say, teen years?
Okay, nice. I like this. This is good.
That's a pretty harmless question.
I think that's a harmless question. I think it's a fun question because it also like branch out into like more things about whoever my next guest is, who I don't even know who it is yet. I'm gonna find out
exciting.
Tomorrow. I'm ahead of schedule now, so like I can record this over the weekend, and that's actually I'm getting ideas to encourage, or was it to make my workflow better?
There you go.
Brad, thank you for having us on. Or I don't know why I do that. Every once in a while, I have somebody on.
Yeah, well, thank you for being on my show, man. I appreciate it. What if we just found out that we were like in an alternate universe? This actually is my podcast, and you've been on my show the whole time.
I haven't said much.
You think that you're running a podcast? Yeah, I'm the worst interviewer. I just
talk the whole time like this, and I'm like.
Anyway, I want to thank you guys for tuning in to Perspectives. I'm Jeremiah Stephenson, and I'm so glad you joined us. Come back next week. We'll be talking about formative music from teenage years and the proper way to peel a banana.
Oh. Is there an improper way to peel a banana? Is my first question.
You know, they say that you're supposed to peel it, like the way that it curves is apparently it's designed to curve toward the mouth. So you peel it like away where the banana points toward. This is getting weird. Like this is probably the best place to just sort of fade to music and move out of the episode.
So you can find me, Jeremiah, on YouTube at A Token's Take, ATOKENS EN''S TAKE. You can find me on Instagram at Parkour Geek, PARKOURG33K. You can also find me on Facebook, but I don't know you. I'm not gonna fucking add you. Brad, is there anything you would like to plug?
So we're gonna be producing a play called Becky Shaw. It's a fantastic play. If you are a theater person, imagine all the volatility and wit and rawness of David Mamet, but like emotionally intelligent and not celebrating misogyny. It's going to be at the Robert Mello Studio is letting us rent their space. We got a phenomenal cast: Chris Myers, Catherine Barnes, Melissa Rainey, and Alicia Kelly. And myself are going to be in the show. It is going to be the inaugural production of Conduit Theater Company at RMS the first 3 weekends in September. So I hope you'll come see it.
Awesome. Do you have Instagram or Facebook or anything?
Mr. Brad Brinkley.
Or just Instagram, unless you want to do Facebook. I always say that.
I will take anybody. Okay. But I will also block people instantly. Like I will absolutely, if I see that we've got more than a couple of mutual friends on Facebook, I will take you. I will love you. You will be my friend. But if you do weird stuff, like I accept your friend request and you immediately send me a like for your page, you're out, dude. And I'm just going to block you and we're done. I don't have to worry about it anymore. Yeah. But if you want to find me on Instagram, I don't post a whole lot, but it's at Mr. Brad Brinkley. That's my handle, and happy to connect with you there.
Awesome. Again, thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks, brother.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Thank you for listening. Be love, be life, be.